The alien camp was filled with warriors from many planets, all bigger and stronger than the single human among them. His name was Jack, and he stood quietly at the edge, cleaning his gear, not saying a word. He had survived many battles, but no one respected him, to them. He was just a weak creature from a small blue planet. The alien commander, a tall creature with silver horns, called the warriors together. He looked at Jack and gave a cold smile. "There is a beast in the jungle. Far in the dead zone," the commander said, loud so all could hear. "It killed 3 of our scouts and destroyed a drone." He turned to Jack and added with mock kindness, "You're fast, aren't you, human? Go bring us the beast's heart." The others laughed loudly. Everyone knew it was a suicide mission. The jungle was cursed, filled with shadows and creatures that hunted even in daylight. No one ever returned from there. Jack didn't argue. He just nodded, picked up his small pack, and walked toward the dark trees without saying a word. As he reached the edge of the jungle, the air grew heavy. Birds didn't sing here, and no wind moved the trees. It was like stepping into another world, darker, quieter. Watching, Jack moved carefully. Every step slow and measured. He didn't carry big guns like the aliens. Just a small blade, a flare, and a rope. He had learned long ago brains survive. More than strength, hours passed, maybe more, as he moved deeper into the jungle. He found broken trees, deep claw marks, blood on rocks. Something big had been here recently. Suddenly, the bushes to his left moved. He turned fast, but nothing came out. Then behind him, a low growl rumbled. He spun. Heart racing, there it was, a massive beast with glowing red eyes, black horns, and thick armor-like skin. It looked like a mix of a bear, a lizard, and a nightmare. Jack didn't move. The beast stared at him, then roared so loud the ground shook. Then it vanished into the shadows, like smoke. Jack didn't chase it. He climbed a tree and hid in silence, thinking, planning. The beast wasn't just strong, it was smart. It watched before attacking. He needed to know its habits, its paths. For 2 nights, he followed it from a distance. Never sleeping, barely eating, he learned it drank at a certain spring. It slept deep in a cave near a bone pile. He saw how it moved, how it used trees and shadows to hunt. Jack didn't want to fight it with brute force. He wanted to outsmart it. He built small traps from vines and bones. He sharpened sticks into spikes, covered them in poison he made from jungle plants. He dug a pit and covered it with leaves. Every move had to be perfect. One mistake, and he would become just another skeleton among the trees. Then, on the 3rd night, he waited. The beast came slowly, sniffing the air. It smelled him, roared, and charged. Jack ran, not away, but toward the trap. The beast followed, crashing through trees like thunder. Jack leaped over the pit. The beast followed on, fell in, but it didn't die. It climbed back out. Bleeding but angrier than ever, Jack threw a flare at its face. Blinding it for a moment, he jumped onto its back and stabbed down with his poisoned blade. Again and again, the beast thrashed, screamed, then finally fell. The forest went silent. Jack sat beside the dead creature, breathing hard. He didn't smile. He just looked at its bones and thought, "They sent me here to die." He cut off the beast's heart, heavy and still warm. Then he began pulling off pieces of its bone. He worked all night. When he rose the next morning, his body was covered in its armor. He didn't look like a man anymore. He looked like something else, something born from the jungle itself. Then, carrying the heart and wearing the bones, he walked back toward the alien camp, and the jungle, once again, grew quiet behind him. Like it had accepted him. He didn't speak as he walked. But anyone who saw him coming would never forget the sight of the human who returned from death, wearing the bones of the monster that no one else could kill. And the real story was only just beginning. No one believed he would return. But when Jack walked back into the alien camp, bleeding, bruised, and wearing the bones of the beast, the laughter stopped. The alien leader who had sent him to die went pale. The soldiers stared, silent. Some whispered his name. But most just stepped out of his way. He didn't speak. He dropped the heart of the jungle beast at the commander's feet and walked to his tent. No victory speech, no bragging, just silence. And that silence was louder than any roar. That night, while the others drank and stared, Jack sat alone and cleaned the beast's bones. They were thick and strange, black with red veins, warm to the touch. Even dead, they felt alive. The jungle beast was not normal. It was older than the war, older than the camp. He had seen strange markings carved into the rocks near its cave, and when he burned the beast's remains, the fire didn't burn blue or orange, it burned green, and the smoke moved against the wind. Like it had a mind of its own. The next day, he took the bones to a local forge. The alien smith took one look and stepped back. "This is cursed," the smith said. Jack didn't argue. He just placed a small box of trade chips on the table and waited. By nightfall, the bones had become armor. A shoulder plate, chest guard, claws over his hands fitted to him alone. When he wore it, he didn't look human anymore. He looked like something the jungle had created and sent back to scare the world. The armor was light but strong, and when he moved, it didn't make a sound. Jack tested it in the field. He went back to the jungle. Not to fight, but to learn. There were more creatures there, smaller but still dangerous. He began studying them, tracking them, understanding the jungle's way. Soon, the beasts didn't run from him. They watched him. Some followed him from the trees, but didn't attack, as if they knew he had slain their king, or maybe they believed he was part of the forest now. One night, while setting traps near the river, he heard a growl not far, not close, but loud. He turned and saw glowing red eyes watching him from the dark. Another beast, but not the same kind. This one was faster, with thinner legs and a long tail. It didn't roar, it hissed. It was testing him, circling him, trying to see if he was weak. Jack crouched low. No fear in his breath. When it lunged, he rolled under it and stabbed its side with his new blade. The blade cut deep. The beast screamed and ran back into the forest. He didn't chase it. He only followed the blood trail. Slowly, carefully, the trail ended at a rock circle deep in the trees. There were symbols drawn in old blood, bones stacked like a shrine, and in the middle, a cracked stone showing a picture, a creature with armor like his, holding a bone blade and standing over three beasts. It looked like him. He stepped closer, but as he did, the wind stopped, the forest turned quiet, and the air became cold. Suddenly, a whisper ran through the tree snot, a voice. But a feeling, not fear, but warning. He stepped back, heart pounding. This jungle wasn't just a place, was alive, and it had rules. He was changing. Every day spent here was turning him into something else. He felt faster, stronger, but colder too. He didn't dream anymore, and his heartbeat was slower. He didn't know if it was the armor, or the air, or something inside him waking up. Back at camp, strange things started to happen. A soldier who mocked him tripped during training and broke his leg. Another tried to touch his armor and screamed in pain. His hand blistered. Whispers began spreading. "Cursed," they said. "Beast touched," others whispered, but no one dared say it to his face. One night, the alien leader called a private meeting. "You're scaring them," he told Jack. "They say you're not human anymore." Jack looked at him calmly and replied, "I was never here to make them comfortable." Then he stood and left, outside. The moons glowed red, and Jack looked at the jungle once more. Something inside him called again, deep and low. The red eyes from the dark were watching, waiting, and Jack. He was ready. The alien camp was still. A cold mist had settled over the tents. No one laughed anymore, not after what happened in the jungle. Jack had returned alive, but he didn't return the same. He had entered the cursed woods as a human soldier, but now, no one knew what he was. He didn't walk like before. He moved quieter than wind. Even when surrounded by noise, he made no sound. He didn't speak to anyone unless he had to. And when he did, his eyes looked far, like they were seeing something deeper than the world around him. Some began to call him the dead man, because to them, he had died in that jungle and something else had come back. The armor made from beast bones didn't help. It looked unnatural, shining in the dark, sometimes glowing with faint red lines. Especially at night, the younger soldiers avoided him. Some made silent signs for protection when he passed. They said the armor whispered at night, and more than once. Guards claimed they saw him standing outside the jungle still, unmoving for hours, just watching the trees. The alien leader, Commander Vorak, watched all this from a distance. He had sent Jack to die, but now Jack walked freely, respected, feared, and silent. Vorak didn't like it. Power was shifting. The camp used to follow his orders. Now, they watched Jack instead. Even the hunters asked for his advice on traps and movement. Some even copied the design of his armor, using bones from smaller beasts. But none had the same effect. One evening, a small scout team returned. Pale and shaken, they had gone to the jungle's edge to map new terrain. But they had seen something: huge claw marks on the rocks, and bones arranged in a strange circle. But the worst part? A drawing on a stone made with red paste. It showed a man wearing beast bones. Standing over a dead alien leader, the drawing looked fresh, too fresh. When Vorak heard this, his hands trembled slightly. He ordered the image erased, but by the next morning, 3 more drawings appeared across the camp. Rumors spread like fire. Some said Jack was chosen by the forest spirits. Others claimed the beast he killed had passed its soul into him. Some even believed he was no longer human, that the jungle had claimed his body. But something older had claimed his soul. That night, Vorak called a secret meeting with his closest guards. "We must watch him," he said. "He is dangerous." One guard asked, "Should we?" "Kill him, sir." Vorak didn't answer at first. Then he whispered, "Not yet." But Jack already knew. He always knew. He felt the eyes, the whispers, the tension in the air. He didn't sleep in his tent anymore. He slept near the jungle, close to the shadows. He said it was quieter there, but the truth was, he didn't feel safe among people anymore. Only the forest didn't lie to him. One day, a new soldier arrived at the camp. She was a tracker from the Fire Moons, bold and skilled. She approached Jack with no fear. "I heard you wear the bones of gods," she said, half smiling. Jack looked at her and replied softly, "They were not gods." "What were they then?" she asked. He didn't answer. Instead, he handed her a bone shard, shaped like a fang. "Keep this," he said. "If you ever find yourself alone in the dark, it may listen." That night, she slept with it under her pillow. And in her dreams, she saw fire, trees, and a large red eye staring at her. When she woke, the bone was warm. She didn't question it. She just respected him more. Soon, more and more soldiers came to him in secret. Not to worship, but to ask for help, advice, protection, guidance. Jack became something strange in the camp, not a leader by title, but a leader by fear and legend. That scared Vorak more than anything. The balance had shifted. Jack didn't need to raise a weapon. He had already won their loyalty with silence, with survival, with mystery. But the question remained, what did he want now? Was he planning something? Would he take control? Or was he waiting for something darker to arrive? And deep in the jungle, something was moving. Not beast, not man, not spirit, but something old. It had felt the death of the great jungle creature. It had felt the blood spill, the bones taken, and now It was waking as Jack stood at the edge of the camp once again. Staring into the trees, he felt it too. A presence calling to him, slow and heavy. Not with words, but with memory. He didn't smile. He just whispered to himself, "It's not over," and the jungle listened. The camp was no longer a place of order. It was quiet, but not peaceful. Each tent held whispers, eyes that shifted when Jack walked by. Fewer soldiers followed Commander Vorak. Now, more of them followed Jack. Without a word, not because he told them to, but because they felt something around him, something real. Stories had reached beyond the camp to other alien clans, distant outposts, and wild warbands. The tale of the human who walked into the cursed jungle and returned wearing bones. They called him Bone Walker, Dead Man, Forests. Hand, names carried by wind, told at fire pits, passed between starships. But not everyone believed the legend. Some saw it as a challenge. One morning, a group of warriors arrived at the camp gates. They wore armor made from scaled beasts, red and gold paint on their faces. Clan Scarhide, the most brutal fighters of the southern moons. They walked through the camp without asking, without bowing, and stood in the middle like they owned it. Their leader, a giant with 6 arms and tusks, shouted across the camp, "Where is the bone-wearing coward?" Jack stepped forward silently, no expression on his face. The Scarhide leader spat on the ground. "They say you killed the Jungle King, that the forest listens to you." He sneered. "I say, you're just lucky." No one moved. Jack didn't answer. He looked at the 6-armed warrior and slowly took off his gloves, revealing scars, burns, and bone spikes fused into his skin. "Luck doesn't leave marks like these," he said quietly. The Scarhide leader threw down a heavy warhammer. "Then prove it," a challenge. One-on-one combat, no rules, no mercy, no backup. The circle was drawn. Soldiers from every corner of the camp gathered. Even Vorak watched from a distance, hiding his concern behind a fake smile. This fight wasn't just about strength. If Jack won, the clans would start following him. If he lost, the whispers would end. Jack entered the circle, wearing only his bone armor, no helmet, no heavy weapon. The Scarhide champion towered over him, holding a hammer the size of Jack's chest, but Jack didn't flinch. He stood still, breathing slowly, listening not to the crowd, but to the ground, the wind, his own blood. The horn sounded, and the beast charged. A roar, loud and wild. But Jack stepped aside calmly, letting the hammer crash into dirt. Then he moved like smoke, quick, sharp, low. He stabbed under the arm, then rolled away, not killing, just testing. The crowd gasped as the Scarhide bled. The beast screamed and rushed again. Jack leaped onto his back and struck his neck twice, then landed and stepped back. The Scarhide fell to one knee, breathing hard. He was strong, but too loud, too wild. Jack was a shadow, silent, clean, deadly. In 5 moves, it was over. Jack stood behind the kneeling warrior, his blade pressed against the back of his neck. "But he didn't kill," he whispered. "You came to see if I was real." He pulled the blade away. "Now you know." The Scarhide dropped his weapon and bowed for the first time in years. That warrior kneeled to another man. Then, in front of everyone, he took off a piece of his own armor and handed it to Jack, an old sign of respect among clans. The next day, more warriors arrived. Not to fight, but to swear loyalty. They brought gifts, weapons, beast skins, and tokens from there. Tribes. One even handed Jack a bone flute carved from the spine of a storm beast. "You lead now," he said, "even if you don't want to." But Jack didn't hold meetings. He didn't give speeches. He trained in silence. He hunted in the woods. He taught a few how to move, how to track, how to listen to the land. And those few taught others. And slowly, a new kind of army formed, not loud, not proud, but ready. Vorak tried to smile, to pretend nothing had changed, but in truth, he was no longer the commander. The clans no longer obeyed his orders. They obeyed Jack's silence. He called no one to follow him. Yet they did. He promised no reward. Yet they gave him everything. Because when Jack looked into the jungle, they all felt it too. Something was still watching. Something older. Something not yet finished. And whatever was coming, they knew. Only one warrior could lead them through it, and he wasn't their leader by name. He was their leader because death had touched him and let him walk away. Commander Vorak stood at the top of the watchtower. Below him, the camp no longer felt like his. Warriors from distant clans trained in silence. They didn't follow his commands anymore. They followed Jack, the man he once sent to die. The man who came back wrapped in bones and mystery. Vorak's pride burned like poison in his veins. Every night he sat in his quarters, watching shadows move and hearing whispers he couldn't control. Jack had said nothing, made no demands, taken no title. And that made it worse. A man who didn't want power was more dangerous than one who begged for it. Vorak had tried to ignore it. He told himself the stories would fade, that fear would pass. But then the clans started calling Jack their silent chief. They made bone totems in his image. They carved his name into stone. And the final insultsome began wearing armor styled after his, not Vorak's crest. Not the old emblems, but bone. Always bone. He couldn't let it go on. Not anymore. So one cold night, Vorak gathered 3 of his most loyal guards in secret. Strong ones, silent ones. He poured them strong drink and leaned close. I made him, Vorak whispered. Now I will unmake him. He laid out a plan. There would be a feast to celebrate a false victory. An old tradition, bring the warriors together. Honor the living, forget the dead. Jack would be the guest of honor. The seat at Vorak's side was already prepared, and under that seat a hidden needle would be set. Maul, coated in a clear jungle poison, a scratch was enough. He would fall hours later. In his own tent, no blood, no signs. It would look like the jungle finally came back for him. The guards agreed, though their eyes held doubt. Even they feared the dead man, but Vorak promised them riches, power, land on the outer moons. Enough to make them brave for now. The next day, drums echoed across the camp. Tents were raised, meat roasted. Music played for the first time in many moons. Everyone smiled, but the smiles didn't reach their eyes. Jack stood at the edge of the gathering, watching. He didn't trust celebrations. He trusted silence. Still, when Vorak approached with a grin, arms open, Jack nodded slowly. I offer peace, Vorak said. Tonight, we are brothers. Jack sat beside him. The table was filled with food, drink, stories, laughter. Vorak spoke loudly. Praised Jack's strength. He poured him a golden cup, smiling wide. This is a drink of honor, he said. Jack stared at the cup, then stared at Vorak's hand. Then he took the cup, smiled softly, and offered a toast to those who return from the dead. But he didn't drink, not yet. He placed the cup on the table. Slowly, then he looked down at his seat, ran his fingers underneath, found the needle. He didn't flinch. He simply held it up for all to see. The crowd went silent. The music stopped. Then, without a word, Jack stood, walked around the table, and offered the needle to Vorak. This was under my chair, he said calmly. I thought you might want it back. Vorak's mouth opened, but no sound came. The guards tried to step forward, but froze when the warriors surrounding Jack moved closer. Bone-armored fighters, eyes cold, faces unreadable. No weapons raised yet, but every breath in the room paused. Jack leaned close to Vorak, his voice barely a whisper. You sent me to die once. He said, you sent your beasts, your poison, your fear. He placed the needle in Vorak's shaking hand. "But I don't die easy." Then he stepped back and left the tent. The others followed, silent as shadows. Only the wind dared speak now. That night, Vorak didn't sleep. He stared at the poison needle in his hand for hours. He had failed. But worse, he had tried and been caught. And now? Everyone knew his power was shattered. His command was hollow. No one spoke to him the next day. The guards avoided his eyes. The warriors trained with Jack and his followers. And at night, small fires burned near the jungle's edge fires. Led by the ones who wore bone, Jack didn't take revenge. He didn't need to. The jungle had already chosen sides, and Vorak was already forgotten. They no longer called him Jack in the camp, to most. He had become something else, something they couldn't explain. They now whispered a new name in the dark. Beastwalker, not because he hunted them, but because the beasts no longer hunted him. Some said they walked beside him in the forest. Others claimed he spoke to them without words, but no one doubted anymore. Whatever had returned from the jungle was not just human. Jack didn't stay in the main camp much. He built a smaller one near the tree line. There were no gates, no guards, only bones hanging from trees. To most, it looked like a place of death, but to the ones who followed him was sacred ground. A place of learning. Young warriors trained there in silence. They weren't taught how to swing swords. They were taught how to listen, how to move with the wind, how to track the heartbeat of prey from smell. How to survive not as soldiers, but as hunters of legend. Each of them wore a token carved from beast bone, not for decoration, but for connection. Jack said, "If you take from the jungle, leave something behind." So they did, offerings of fruit, feathers, water, even drops of blood. The forest seemed to accept them. One night, a wild beast stormed into the camp. A razor-backed tusker, blind with rage. The old soldiers scrambled for weapons, but before anyone reached, Jack stepped in front. He didn't run, he didn't shout, he just raised his hand. The beast slowed, confused, snorted, paced, growled, but didn't charge. It stood in front of him, muscles shaking, eyes glowing red. Then it lowered its head and backed away into the trees. The whole camp watched, frozen. Not a single strike was made, but every heart was hit. From that day, no one doubted his bond with the jungle. Even the elders began to visit him in secret, asking questions about old symbols, forgotten paths, cursed places. Jack knew answers, but never told everything. He gave only what was needed. He wasn't trying to rule them. He was trying to prepare them. Something was coming. He could feel it, like the ground itself was warning him. Every night, he felt it in his dreams. A cold voice, a shadow without form, something deep beneath the roots. Watching, breathing. So Jack did what he always did. He listened, he moved, he prepared. He took a group of trusted followers into the jungle for days at a time. They returned changed, quieter, stronger, sharper. Some returned with new scars. Others with strange eyes that glowed slightly in moonlight. They began marking their skin with old symbols Jack had seen carved into the stones around the jungle shrine. Vorak, once the commander, now watched from afar. No one saluted him. No one obeyed. His tent was empty. His words ignored. He tried once more to call a meeting. Only 2 came. And even they only listened in silence before leaving. Jack didn't take power by force, but power came to him anyway. When the outer patrols needed a leader, they called him. When the traders needed safety, they asked his permission. When the jungle whispered again, they waited for his signal. He was the center now. Not in the way of a king, but in the way of gravity. Everything moved because he moved one night. While walking alone at the forest's edge, he found something new, a path that wasn't there before, made not by feet, but by roots pulling away. It led deeper than he had ever gone, and at the end, a clearing full of bones. glowing moss and a circle of stone. In the center sat a single claw, huge, ancient, covered in vines. It pulsed with energy he didn't understand. He stepped close, knelt down, and placed a hand upon it. Images filled his mind, visions of fire, beasts, war, and stars falling from the sky. A voice spoke not in words, but in feeling. It didn't welcome him. It acknowledged him. He left that place before sunrise, said nothing to anyone. But those who looked closely saw the change. His bone armor was darker, almost black. His eyes glowed faintly at night, and from that day, no beast ever came near. His camp again, he had not just survived the jungle, he had been accepted by it, and now he carried its will. The sky turned red before the first attack. No one expected it, not even Jack. But the forest felt it. The animals vanished. The wind stopped, and the trees leaned toward the camp like they were listening. Jack stood alone at the edge of the jungle when he saw the dark shape in the clouds. A ship, no many ships, fast, sharp, full of fire. An enemy force. Not from the nearby clans or war bands, but from the outer empire. A cruel species that took planets, burned forests, and chained anything that breathed. They had heard about. The bone-armored human. They didn't like stories of resistance. So they came to erase him. The first ship landed hard, metal claws crushing trees. Flames sprayed across the jungle. Soldiers in red armor marched out with heavy weapons. They laughed, expecting panic. But the camp didn't run, because the one they feared was already walking toward the fire. Jack didn't raise a banner. He didn't shout. He just walked forward. Alone, with beast bone armor dark as ash, his eyes glowing faintly like embers. The invaders aimed their weapons at him and fired. The smoke rose, dust filled the air. But when it cleared, he was still standing, not untouched, but unmoved. His armor cracked slightly, but his expression did not change. He raised one hand, and the jungle moved. From the trees came his warriors, silent, fast, deadly. They wore bone armor. Masks carved from tusks, claws on their arms. They didn't fight like soldiers. They fought like ghosts. They disappeared and struck again. They used the land. The trees, the shadows, the invaders panicked. They fired in all directions. But every shot missed something that wasn't there anymore. Then the beasts came. Real beasts. The ones that once feared humans. Now walked beside them. Jack stood in the middle of the battlefield like a totem of death. He didn't lead with words. He led with presence. Every enemy who looked at him saw not a man, but the jungle itself. Living, breathing, and angry. The battle raged for hours. And then stopped as suddenly as it started. Not because the enemy surrendered, but because they had no one left to fight. The fire was gone. The air smelled like smoke, blood, and damp earth. Jack walked through the ruins of what had once been machines. He touched the trees gently. They had burned, yes, but not died, and neither had he. The other camps came days later. They heard what happened and came with armies, but they didn't find a battlefield. They found a story carved into trees, bones, and silence, a story of a man who returned from death, became one with the beasts, and stopped an empire. They tried to speak with him, to offer him titles, crowns, thrones, gold, ships, fame. He refused all of it. He looked at the jungle and said only, "I was never meant to lead cities," and he walked back into the trees. No one followed, because no one dared. Some say he still walks there, not aging, not sleeping, just watching. Others say he became part of the land, that when the jungle moves in the wind, it speaks in his voice. But one thing is true, the empire never returned. They feared the jungle, they feared the silence, they feared the man who wore death-like armor, the man they once tried to kill, the man who rose from the dark and taught them what it meant to face the beast walker and the forest. It remembers. It always remembers.